Hi, all. I'm Cullen Haynes, and welcome to Lawyer Lending Live. This is an episode you want to tune in because we've just had a rate rise. We are live. It is now 1:30 in Sydney on Wednesday, the 5th of April, and my next guest is an absolute champion, previously a stock jock since 2006, and joined Providence Property Group in 2014 and has been delivering fantastic outcomes in the space of property for not only his family, his clients, friends, whatnot. Can you please make very welcome the one, the only, Mr. Jay Pace, the director of Providence Property Group. How are you, Jay, and how are you feeling, mon ami?
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very, very well. And let's just call it out. This image in the top right is not the best, but it's not my finest hour. But
great,
you know
Jesse.
what? We got to do it. We got to do it. But mate, what are you seeing in the market at the moment? Oh, okay.
I think it shows you
it does a little bit,
which is great. Well, mate. I mean, obviously, yesterday we had the RBA make the shock announcement that they were going to put things on hold. And
yes,
I don't think after last year anybody really trusts anything that Philip Lowe or anybody at the RBA says is going to happen. So when we heard, I think it was the month before, that things might be getting put on pause, I think a lot of people thought, yeah, maybe June, maybe new financial year. And for them to do that, I thought that was really interesting. Were you shocked by the announcement at all?
No, because look, when I was hearing that two banks were saying they're going to raise rates and then two banks to say it was going to hold, in my mind, hallucinating. I know we can take this with a grain of salt because obviously we know the answer and everything's 2020 in hindsight. But what I was telling clients, even before the rate hold, was inflation's kind of going down a little bit more. I don't know. I think we need to just leave it, just let it hang, because we've gone from 0 to 100 literally in 10 rate rises. Give people a chance to breathe. And what's interesting, Jay, is I am getting notifications from the big donut, Macquarie, Me Bank. Every bank is lowering their fixed rates. Isn't that interesting? I just thought that was so amazing. Like, once we give the market a chance to breathe, the banks are like, oh, we can't keep raising rates. We've got to do something here. And they've gone overzealous on the fixed, in my opinion, anyway. So they're bringing down those fixed rates.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. I think that the RBA holding rates is the loudest starter gun to what's probably going to be one of the biggest races in the country of people trying to get finance and jump in, because there are literally billions of dollars in finance that have been on the table since January this year for both owner-occupiers and investors. And they were waiting for a sign. And if the RBA holding rates isn't a sign, well, those people are not going to buy property. But I can tell you that, yes, I got so many phone calls yesterday as soon as it happened from clients going, oh, I'm ready to buy now. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, isn't that funny? They're looking at the TV. They're waiting for the news to say, okay, now maybe it's time. But you know what? Like, you'll see a little jump now because everyone's getting in. I've got literally, my inbox is now over 100, and a lot of them are people saying, let's go. I'm ready to buy. It's staggering what something like this does for people who are sitting on the fence.
Absolutely. So you asked before, you said, what are you seeing in the market? At the moment, the current state of the Australian property market, I think there's a lot of things people aren't focusing on that they need to, because the fear, like you were kind of alluding to, has been so paralyzing for people. But we currently have, these are some pretty big factors. We currently have more buyers than sellers. So we've got record low levels of advertised stock. So about 20% below the 5-year average, which is a big gap, okay? You've got billions of dollars in approved loans for both investors and owner-occupiers waiting, as I said before, to jump in since January. You've got the highest increase to rents on record, over 20% since March 2020, which is massive increase, and obviously affecting the cost of living. And anybody that was getting hit with increased interest rates is trying to pass those on to their tenants as well, if they've got an investment property, which makes total sense. You've got the highest international migration rate on record, 650,000 as reported by the Australian last week, in the next 18 months. The last time we had anything that close, it was during Kevin 07, and we had 580,000 people over 2 years. This is going to blow that out of the water with 650. So that's going to severely impact supply and demand in an already very tight rental market. You've got low levels of new buildings and development.
Yes.
Development applications are reaching GFC 2008 record lows. And the reason we're seeing that, obviously, is because interest rates are up. COVID really did a number on the cost of import and materials and labor. So we're seeing less product being built. So it's really interesting. To summarize it, I think we've gone from fear of missing out in starting kind of September 2020 onwards.
Yes, that's a good point.
To May 2022, which is when interest rates started going up. And Sydney actually started coming off in January anyway. But from May 2022, then you had this fear of overpaying. So you went from FOMO to FOPO to now going back to FOMO again, right?
Isn't that funny? It's starting to start your engines now.
That's exactly what it is. So FOMO, FOPO, back to FOMO. And I just think it's very interesting because I'm, again, just getting clients who are coming back and saying, oh, now we're ready to buy. And the interesting thing about that is that when you break it down, it's kind of like those people are waiting for open homes to have 50 people show up again. They're waiting for auctions to have 20 registered bidders, and they're waiting for properties to go $500,000 above reserve again. And that's the sign for them to jump back into the market.
Yes. All cogent points there. And it leads me, it's a nice segue into what we're going to talk about, because I think buyer's agents and being an advocate is becoming a lot more prevalent. But lawyers, our demographic, our clients, we love them, are very skeptical people. They look for the rain clouds beyond the rainbows. And I find that lawyers and real estate agents in general clash at most times because the industry is unregulated. You've got someone who doesn't work for you, works for the vendor. And most people think that the real estate agent is their friend. But I'd love to tell, maybe we call this out. And I've got real estate agent friends and people in the business. I'm not denigrating them at all, but I want to talk about the difference between a real estate agent and what a buyer's agent actually does.
Yeah, great comments, great insight, and great question. It's really funny because with a real estate agent, again, you said that they work for the vendor, but they also really work for themselves, because at the end of the day, if they can get an extra $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for the vendor for the sale of their property, if they're charging a 2% fee, it's a couple of $100, maybe $1,000 for them, right? The incentive for them to actually push to get that extra 10, 20 grand, which would be 10, 20 grand in my pocket as a seller, in their pocket, it's a couple $100. Plus what it does is that couple $100 is costing them time when they could be dealing with another vendor. So even though they still do work for the vendor, and again, I've got lots of real estate agent mates and they're good people, but I'm saying the position that they have is inherently conflicted, because working for the vendor is their job, but at the same time, trying to get the next sale is what they need to do for their business. And because of the way that the commission structure is set up, they're not really incentivized to go that extra mile for that extra couple $1,000.
Yes.
Which is quite interesting. And I think smart people like conveyancers, like solicitors, barristers, like yourself, they already know that. So they know that the vendor's agent is not their friend. They know that the vendor's agent's not the vendor's friend.
Yes.
They're just this independent cowboy that you got to kind of deal with. And the way that buyer's agents have a very different dynamic with them.
Yes.
Is simply we are another professional. This is better because the dynamic between the buyer's agent and the real estate agent, I don't mean they tell you exactly what's going on, but you're two professionals meeting. They know that you know the law. They know that you know how to value a property. They know that you know what other properties have sold recently for. So they know you're kind of on the same level as them. And very quickly, they open up about their client. So they'll say, because I'll go to an agent and say, how are you justifying this purchase price that you're expecting here, when I know that I dealt with Nick Barakostas at Ray White the other day, and I bought something for this, and I was dealing with this guy here. And they sit there and they straight away just say, listen, the vendor's got unrealistic expectations. So they admit that to you because you know it and they know it. And they're like, I'm just trying to find something. And the agent is actually very excited when you make your offer, because usually when a buyer's agent makes an offer, or a good buyer's agent, you'll justify that offer based off data. And
Yes.
the agent then takes that data, gives it back to the vendor, because remember, the agent's always the bearer of bad news to the vendor. You know,
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
always coming with bad news. So the vendor ends up hating the agent as well as the buyer typically does. So the agent gets no love. But if you can give the agent and arm them with something where when they go back to the vendor, they say, I've got an offer. It's from a buyer's agent. They buy hundreds of properties every year. I know this company because they've bought many properties from us. And interestingly enough, their offer reflects what I originally told you this property was worth. It vindicates the agent and makes them kind of show for a second, I am a professional. I do know what I'm talking about, because another professional has just verified what my original findings were.
Yes.
And it makes the agent want to work with you more as a buyer's agent. Plus, as well, I guess the last thing there is that the agent wants to sell as many properties as possible. That vendor represents one transaction. The buyer represents one transaction. A buyer's agent represents multiple transactions over the year. Who do you think the real estate agent wants to keep in their good books out of those three people?
It's a good point. And I've used that example many a time. Like, if you're going to go with the same offer, like someone who doesn't have a buyer's agent and the person behind them with the buyer's agent, same offer, the real estate agent usually goes with the buyer's agent because they're thinking of their next deal.
Exactly correct. So that's definitely one of the big benefits of having a buyer's agent there, is somebody that knows what's happening with the agents and how the game's kind of played. But the main three areas that a buyer's agent should really be able to assist you with is saving you time, saving you money, and minimizing stress. And
yes.
Do you mind if I break those down real quickly, each one of those?
Break it down. I tell clients an application takes 31 hours. That's 31 billable hours you don't have to do. We will take that off your hands, Mrs. Partner.
Yeah, mate. And that time is probably going to go up now with all these people rushing to go and get loans now that the RBA said they're going to hold it. So in regards to saving time, so according to Domain, all right, the average Aussie takes about 9 months to buy a property. Okay, pretty significant amount of time. During the height of COVID in 2021, the average Sydney property was increasing by $26,000 per month.
Wow.
Okay, like significant increases. Okay, so you'll most likely extend your pre-approval at least probably twice based upon Domain's data, which is not fun, and we all know that.
No.
You said a pre-approval, right? Let's say that lasts typically, what, 3 months?
90 days. That's correct.
Okay. So you really only got 12 weekends. Okay. Let's say 12 Saturdays to assess and potentially negotiate properties. No one's going to do all 12 weekends in a row. Okay. Very few will. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they do half. They do 6 of those 12. Out of those 6, they're probably going to see an average of 2 properties a weekend that they're going to physically go to. Some weekends they'll see 3, some weekends they won't. And also they're going to see lots of properties that look fantastic online, and the second they show up, they do that double take. Everyone's done it before. You pull out your phone again and you're like,
huh? What? Is this even the same? It's like, it looks like,
what film did they use?
It looks so beautiful. It looks like, I don't know, Meet the Parents' House online. It looks like the Addams Family in real life.
Yeah.
What is going on?
So that also takes into account those properties too that they're going to look at and go, no, straight away. So they've probably looked at about 12 properties in 3 months. A buyer's agent like myself and my team here in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth, my team on the ground, they'll look at 12 properties in 1 week. So we're able to get through a lot of properties. Plus as well, and here's a really interesting thing, real estate agents will call me up very often and they'll say, hey, I'm going to a property now and I'm trying to get these clients to sign. All right, they've got 2 other agents that they want to sign. Will you come with me? And the reason they're saying that is because they want to rock up to this open and say, listen, there's no obligation. You haven't signed with me yet. But one of the buyer's agents that I do a lot of work with was in the area. He asked if he could come and see your property before you even sign. Do you mind if I show him the property? The vendors straight away think, holy moly, this real estate agent has already bought a potential buyer and I haven't even signed a contract yet.
Well, many buyers, because he represents a number of people.
Exactly correct. So it does give them that sheen of excellence and gives us that opportunity. Plus, as well, agents will call me up, and it happens all the time where they're like, the vendor is actually really difficult. They don't want to do opens on the weekend. They've got soccer, or they don't want to clean the house, or they're going to do a renovation, but they're not actually going to be ready to sell for a couple of months or weeks. And they're going to say, you're obviously going to be happy to come in and check this property out because you look at hundreds of properties every single month. You'll be able to see past all the negative, bits of the property itself, and you'll be able to see the true value. Before they have an open home that's picture perfect that Bell Property or something puts on their brochure.
Correct.
They're happy to show me the ugly duckling because I can see the swan that it can potentially be. So again, we get that access to those properties that are off market or pre-market. And so that really does save people a lot of time. The next one was saving money. So most Aussies don't know really the difference between searching and researching. Searching for Aussies or researching is jumping on realestate.com or Domain and flicking through stuff. There's so many free websites too that you can use that can give you fantastic data on capital growth rates, rental yields, and obviously that's attractive for investment, but also stuff like NAPLAN scores, median household income, commission housing. Like there's so many things that I think is very important as an owner-occupier that Domain and realestate.com are not going to show you. So that's one of the areas that we have access to that data because of our national team of data experts, and they crunch all that information. Terms of contract, and your clientele will probably appreciate this more than most. Terms of contract are so important in this environment. If it is an auction-only market, which you and I obviously saw very much during late 2020, 2021, and early 2022 here in Sydney, really going to auction, it's all about who's got the most money, all right, at the end of the day. But when you're in a market like we are now, where people are afraid that the property might get passed in, terms of a contract are very attractive. And I'll tell you the most attractive term that we've been putting into our agreements recently have been leaseback agreements. And the reason why that's really attractive is because if you're going to buy a property and you find out that the vendors are owner occupiers, and you also find out that they're probably very asset rich but cash poor, they actually have to wait till settlement till they get the money in their bank account until they can buy something. Or they might go to an expert like you and might get a bridging loan, okay? But what's going to be attractive to those people, even if you pay maybe 20, 30, 40, even 50 grand less, is if you tell those people, I'm not going to disrupt your life. I'm not going to make you move to temporary short-term accommodation and try and get a 3 or 6 month rental agreement somewhere and then settle, use that money to get finance and then go searching for 6 to 9 months, buy a property and then move again. Instead, I'll let you actually keep renting this property off me because I'm not moving in anytime soon. That becomes a very attractive term for those vendors, and they may very well, and we've had it happen many times, accept your lower offer of price because you're not kicking them out in a standard 42-day settlement period.
Gives them options, especially now in this market.
And that's what people want. I mean, one of the biggest problems with purchasing a property is the stress. And the main source of stress is fear of the unknown. So most Australians will purchase 2 or less properties in their lifetime. We purchase hundreds of properties every year. So the client, I think, sees that confidence, understands that process, and that just minimizes that stress. So time, money, stress, if we can save it for them, we'll do it.
Great. Well, in terms of the wider context in where you see the current state of the Australian market, and when someone says is now the right time to buy, what's your response to Uncle Bob or Aunt Jane who asked you that question at the barbecue?
Yeah, I often flip it on them and I say, when's the wrong time to buy?
That's a good one.
Which I just like to know because, as I said, I hear clients that will say, and this happens very often, I hear clients that will say during COVID, as an example, the market's too hot, right? Okay, the market's too hot, I'm not buying now. Then the market starts to drop after interest rates go up. Go back to those same people. Oh, the market looks like it's dropping, like it's too cold. I'm like, this isn't Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's never going to be just right. But if you have a long-term goal or idea of where the property market's going to be, buy when there's the least amount of competition. And right now, there is less competition than usual because you've still got a lot of people, like you said before, listening to the news, reading the paper, listening to what the hairdresser says about property prices and not buying. But the current state of the market right now with, low levels of stock, billions of dollars in approvals, highest rental increases ever, highest international migration, low levels of new builds, and significant savings because Australians obviously saved a lot of money during COVID because we weren't going to Bali every year. You weren't buying a new Mercedes. Frydenberg said unemployment was going to be at 10%, so people were freaking out. Those are all huge pillars that are going to support this market and make it go up.
Yes. Okay. Those are all the things. So that kind of is a really nice segue into the next one. Why is the Australian market going to go up? And in your opinion, why is it going to happen soon?
Yeah, really good question. Again, those main pillars really are going to be, I called them in my video I did the other day, the three horsemen of the property increase, not apocalypse, but increase. And that's going to be tighter stock for sale, tighter stock for rent, and huge amount of demand from overseas migration. Like those are the three main things that run a property market. And you can look at that very simply and break it down for anywhere in Australia, because at the end of the day, the reason why regional areas, as an example, typically don't do as good from a capital growth perspective is for one main reason, and that is population growth. Population growth is what stimulates supply and demand. And the main stimuli of population growth is and always will be employment opportunities. So this is why one of the patterns we've been seeing for the past couple of years now is a lot of money leaving the southeast coast, Sydney and Melbourne, which are the largest capital cities populated in Australia, and it's started to spread. And this happens every property cycle. So it's very normal, but it's starting to spread. And that's why we saw Brisbane do 44% in 2021, which is an amazing increase. And remember, that's the average. There's markets within markets. So there's suburbs there that did over 80, 70, 100% sometimes, right? And then we saw Perth, WA increase in value quite significantly, Adelaide increase in value. So I think that one of the reasons why we're going to see property in Sydney and Melbourne stay at least strong and start to go up is for those reasons I mentioned before. But I think that yield now has become such an important part of people's portfolios that they're starting to search for it in other states. And that's why, I mean, the average yield in Sydney, mate, is 3.2%. Okay. You have and the average property price is $1 million. So that's a $32,000 income on a $1 million property that you're also paying, let's say 6%, a $60,000 interest only amount as well. So that's significantly negatively geared off the bat.
So you're not paying down the debt. You're getting half the income for it. It's cognitive dissonance, and
you're paying rental. You're paying income tax on the income. You're paying rental management fees, insurances, maybe strata. Yes, this is tax deductible, but that's still a large amount of cash flow that you have to use in order to manage the property in the first place.
Yes, it's a good point. So is there a particular strategy that people should employ in terms of the type of property they buy? Do they go regional? What's your feedback to clients when they ask, oh, should I buy an apartment in the city, inner west, or should I go more regional?
I love how your voice gets more nasally when you're doing it.
Yeah, I got to do. That's a general client. A lawyer is much different. A lawyer sounds a lot. No, I'll do a lawyer. Cullen, just tell me where I need to buy. And I can't tell you that. You need to speak to someone like Jeff.
Straight to the point. I've got billable hours. Let's just
look, Cullen, I don't have much time. But when's my loan going to be approved?
So yeah, it's a really good question. Obviously, and you and I mentioned this before, kind of when we were off air. Everyone's different, so everyone has different circumstances in regards to what they want. Owner-occupiers are obviously going to purchase much more from an emotional perspective. Can I see myself living there? Where are the kids going to go to school? Where are they going for extracurricular activities? where am I going to enjoy myself? Where's the bars, restaurants, etc.? It's much more emotional. Okay, so they're typically going to buy around places they're familiar with and they very much like, and they obviously need the data, but it's much more of an emotional decision. The investors, however, are focusing much more on a logical explanation as to why they're buying. Capital growth, rental yield, tax depreciation. They're kind of the three main pillars of benefit that you get from an investment property. So understanding that data is important. But equity, as I said, from the East Coast, where the majority of profit was made for the last 10 years, is, like I said, being moved around. And places like Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth. I mean, Brisbane has the 2032 Olympics. It's one of the largest infrastructure spending programs in Australian history, highest interstate migration numbers in the country over the last 4 years. So people leaving states to go live in Brisbane as a capital city. Perth has the lowest unemployment rate in Australia. The world seems to be going nuts for lithium ion at the moment and renewable energy resources. Perth is the largest exporter of lithium ion on the planet.
Wow.
Perth has the highest median household income. Yeah, they do good. Perth has the highest median household income and the lowest median price point for property in Australia. From the $368 billion, the AUKUS nuclear submarine deal, Perth and Adelaide are going to receive billions of dollars in infrastructure stimulus. So these other capital cities are offering lower entry price costs, higher rental yields, which are going to soften the blow of higher interest rates, attractive long-term historic capital growth, and growth stimuli into the next 2 decades.
Interesting. So I would encourage people, because this is like absolute gold. It's now almost 2:00 here in Sydney. If you have any burning questions for this man, get them in now, either on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, because we are going to be wrapping it up in about 10 minutes. We've already got Charles from Hong Kong saying greetings from Hong Kong. That's Charles Caldwell, an absolute legend in his space. And we got Pranitha saying Pranitha from India, and I'm Cullen from Sydney, and I'm saying hello, Pranitha. But let's get into which capital cities, other than Perth, are you seeing absolutely or underestimated right now, or potential hotspots?
Yeah, I still think, listen, Brisbane and Adelaide are two big ones. The data has not sold me as much on Adelaide.
Okay, my hometown. Shout out to Adelaide. My goodness.
Yeah, they're still 30 minutes behind. I don't know why. As I said, the data has not been as promising there. Tesla wanted to build their gigawatt factory there. There's the nuclear subs, etc. But the unemployment rates are still a little bit too high, in my opinion. Rental yields are attractive. Capital growth has been attractive, but the population growth numbers for SA are still not good enough to make me think that this is a great place to be buying. I would have to give props if we're taking Perth out of the equation. Brisbane still makes so much sense. And very similar to Sydney and New South Wales, you've got the Sunshine Coast to the north, like Newcastle, the Gold Coast to the south, like Wollongong. Very similar in that respect, very similar in regards to the demographics in those areas. The Olympics is going to be a huge stimulus in regards to that particular market. The amount of money they've been spending on their infrastructure spending program is nuts. Queensland's going to be the first state in Australia that has autonomous public transport. Like, they're really pulling out all the stops here to try to get their state moving a lot faster. The Palaszczuk government is another story. They're a thorn in most property investors' sides. They just seem very detached from what property investors need and what they want. They tried last year to do the whole land tax thing, and our guy Percolate said, "I'm not giving you the data," and that fell on its face very, very quickly. They also just mentioned maybe we'll do rent capping in regards to the amount of rent we charge, and that seems like that's going to fall down as well. They just seem not to be very in touch with what investors need, and their affordable housing is crazy as well.
Well, that's a good point. Do you take into account any political things going on, or what current strategies are being implemented over time? Does that go into your thought process when you invest? Do you go, look, they're about to change the government here, it's not going to work in your favor? Is that something that goes into your rubric in decision making?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the most shifting sands you'll ever see is politics, because you can vote somebody in for all the right reasons, and either they don't uphold the promises they said they were going to hold, or they try to uphold them and they get voted out anyway. So it's a real roll of the dice. But definitely understanding that, when Bill Shorten was on his soapbox talking about taking away negative gearing, I mean, that was a huge issue a few years back of people freaking out, because if you take negative gearing away, the example I just gave you of Sydney and the costs of holding a property, if you had no negative gearing benefits, that would drop any type of incentive for people to buy investment properties here in New South Wales. So, understanding that's important. And I think a lot of people don't get the data. And it's the way the media portrays things. I was reading an article the other day, and it was like, they always try to make it the saddest thing you can. It's like, single mother finds out that her rent's gone up by $400 overnight. And you sit there and you look at it from a landlord perspective and you think, well, this landlord that's been renting this property to this poor single mother has had 10 consecutive interest rate rises that they have not been able to pass on to that tenant at all. And now all of a sudden, after taking the brunt of all those losses, they've turned around, they've gone, well, I could actually get more money for this property now. And that's going to not make me buy a new Ferrari, but that's going to help me minimize the cost that I'm paying out to my bank. But the media spin it to make it look like this landlord's this terrible, evil person for increasing their rents. But it's not the landlord's fault.
Absolutely. That'll be the newscast from this. It's not, think of the poor landlords, please. Would someone think of the landlords? But let's talk about landlord strategy, because I'm a landlord of a couple of properties, and I don't increase it like I don't jack it up. Is there a strategy when you do it? Should you do it in increments? Like what's the thought process for landlords, and how should they take that?
The best advice I can give landlords, the first best advice, is never manage a property by yourself. Get a professional. It's not worth it. You save a couple $100 a year to do everything yourself. If you get taken to the tribunal, anything happens, and you're a self-appointed landlord and you don't have a license or anything, no way. So that's the first thing. In regards to increments, I think it's all about the feedback that you get from your rental manager. Because if your rental manager shows you that the tenants are great, they don't complain very much, they're easy, and they plan on staying here for 5 years, that's a tenant you do not want to scare away by increasing the rent just for the hell of it for an extra $10 a week times 52 weeks in the year. $520 difference. Like, is that really going to change your life? So I think that, yes, we're all in this to make money, but I would actually say that most landlords are in it for the property to make the money from a capital growth perspective, rather than from the rent to make the money and substitute an income. So I think there's some give and take with that. And I think that the longer that you've got a tenant in the property, where you don't have to pay advertisement fees again, you don't have to pay for one whole week of a reassignment for your contract. If you can do that, you'll probably end up saving more money holding that tenant than you would increasing the rent.
It's a good point. And I don't think you can shear a sheep many times, but skin it only once. And I'm not saying people are sheep before anyone gets on this. So I'm just using an analogy that you got to think of the long game. It's in sales as well. Do good by your clients. Don't gouge them. And it's a long term. You're not in it for the one thing. So I think that's a good point there. In terms of what you think the New South Wales Labor, or with Labor in, let's have a look at the stamp duty tax that was going to be put in place, the land tax instead of stamp duty. Now they're thinking of, they're going to phase that out, and now it's going to be an increase in stamp duty waiver for first home buyers. They're proposing up to $800,000. It's at $650 now, and you're going to get a concession up to $1 million. How do you think that is going to affect the market?
Yeah, I mean, straight away with those numbers, it's just so out of touch. I mean, the median dwelling value in Sydney for units, houses, townhouses combined is over $1 million already. And it's been that way for quite some time.
Yes.
So what we've been actually seeing is a significant increase in the amount of people that are becoming rent vestors off the bat. So they're sitting there looking at the stamp duty benefits, the first home buyer benefits, and everything like that. And they're going, you know what? This actually is not very attractive. The old strategy used to be, I'm going to buy a crap property in a crap location, live in it for 6 months, get my stamp duty benefits, etc., and then move out of it. You can't even do that anymore because those quote unquote crap properties are now over $1 million.
Correct.
So what we're starting to see is the New South Wales government is actually losing money to other states where people are looking at it going, wait a second, for the 750 grand that I wanted to spend in Sydney on a property that I can't even buy a decent 2-bedroom, I can buy a 3-bedroom townhouse in Brisbane, less than 10 kilometers from the CBD, and I can rent that thing out for 4.5%. Why would I want to stay in Sydney when I was always going to rent in Sydney anyway? Because I can't afford to pay for the places I want to live in. Why would I do that? So we're seeing less and less people getting taken in by those government grants and stamp duty exemptions because they're actually just not giving the value that they need. And they're starting to move that money into state. And I think New South Wales, especially with their homelessness rate, and I put a chart up in one of my last videos of the homelessness rate from 2006, 2016, and now, and how it's just increasing. And I really think with the whole affordable housing thing and the scheme that they're trying to do, there's no way our Australian government's going to be able to pull that off. Have to create some type of incentive program to bring investors back into the market and get them buying again. Because in 2008, the first homeowners grant was $30,000.
Yes.
That's a significant amount of money. And now it's nothing. Like, it really gives you no benefit. So I think that they need to become more in touch with what's happening in the property market. They need to speak to people at PIPA, REIA Group, etc., and really get a better understanding of what's happening with property, because they just don't know what they're doing.
Very, very wise words there, Jay. And look, we're coming to the end of the stream. What is putting you on the spot, but what's either the top one or the top 3 things you tell someone looking to venture into this market? And we've got a few people joining into the stream right now.
Yeah,
so the question again to Jay, who is a buyer's agent at Providence Property Group, what's the 3 things he's going to give you and impart wisdom in this market? Take it away, Jay.
First thing, thank you. First thing is know what your goal is. So we get so many people waste time looking in suburbs and areas that are their unicorns, that they'd love to buy something in there. They've got no clue what the median price point is or anything like that. And they're just looking at what properties are for sale. Stop doing that. Look at what property has sold within the past 3 months. That will give you a better idea of if it's actually a reality that you could buy something there. So don't waste time is the first thing. Secondly, make sure that if you are interested in buying property, you get off your chair and you go out and start going to open homes. People that come to me that say they've been searching for properties for 3 months, and then I ask them, how many opens have you gone to? And they say 5. Well, that person has not been searching for property. They've just been looking at it on realestate.com or Domain, and that's not good enough. The last thing is get professional help. Now, I'm not necessarily just saying a buyer's agent, although it would suit me well, and I think it'd suit you well if you got a buyer's agent, but get a mortgage broker, get a building and pest inspector. Make sure you get a look at the strata report and get a conveyancer to review the sinking fund. These are all things that, yes, cost money, but holy moly, in the years that we've been running this business since 2006, I can tell you the biggest issues pop up when people don't do due diligence. They try to save a few pennies by doing it themselves. They don't use a professional and they end up screwing themselves. So don't look for a unicorn. Get out there and actually get an understanding of what the real market is. And by God's means, please use professional help.
Good point. I love that. And where can people find you, Jay? Where are you hanging out, mon ami? Where is your home?
So we are based in Barangaroo. We have offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth, but we're based in Barangaroo. So anyone that wants to grab a coffee, have a bit of a chat about market, YouTube channel where we do a market update every single video. What we
Fantastic. Well, hit Jay and his team up in Barangaroo. They also do a lot of firm company presentations. I know you do a lot for some of the big firms and some of the law firms. So definitely reach out. And thank you so much for joining there, Jay. It's been fantastic. And all those that have online, we will upload this to the podcast later. And you can rewatch it again on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook right after this. Thanks a lot, Jay.
Thanks, Colin. Great to see you, mate.
Good man.